Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all for being here. We see that we've got a few more folks joining us, so we're going to give just a minute here. I hope you can all see my screen, so you can see that we are all here today for the informational webinar for the Modified Cultural Grants and Aid Program. So we'll be walking you through that this afternoon. We'll just wait a couple more minutes, let a few more folks join. We can see the numbers ticking up, and then we'll get started.
I'm happy to give a few housekeeping items, and we can repeat them again as people start popping in. But as attendees, just want to let you know that all of your microphones do automatically go straight to being muted, so we cannot hear or see you currently. But if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to use, there is a chat feature in your toolbar, as well as a questions feature. Feel free to use either of those. Any questions that come up, feel free to just type them right in. I'll be tracking them throughout, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end of the session.
Thanks, Chantal. Awesome. Well, I know everyone's time is precious, so we will go ahead and get started. The great news is that this webinar is being recorded. And so one of the benefits of that is we will be able to post this webinar and make it available for any of the folks who are not able to join us this afternoon to hear directly and participate in the webinar directly. They will be able to still receive all of the information. But thank you all for being here, and hopefully you'll be gaining some new information about our new modified Cultural Grants and Aid Program. So today we have a few folks joining us in terms of our panelists, and they're going to help as we go through the program during Q&A if there are some specific questions that come up. So you've already met Chantal Burns, our tourism coordinator. I'm Molly Kano, the tourism manager for the city and the PCC staff liaison. In addition, we've got our PCC vice chair, John Thomas, on the call. Also, Ryan Heath, who is one of our GIA subcommittee members and, of course, a member of our promotional coordinating committee. And we also have joining us Jackie Clark-Charlesworth with the SLO Chamber of Commerce. And Jackie will help support the funded events through some promotional efforts that we participate in, coordinate with the Chamber of Commerce. But we'll get to that some more as we get into the program. So again, today we are here to tell you a little bit about the new Modified Cultural Grants and Aid Program. And so the city, under the direction of the PCC, our city council, under the direction of, having given direction to our promotional coordinating committee, recognize that social, cultural, and recreational events through our nonprofit organizations make significant contribution to the overall quality of life in San Luis Obispo, and that is without a doubt. And in order to honor that and to respect that and to support that, the city has been offering a cultural grants and aid program for quite a number of years, for decades actually. And it's definitely one of the most beloved programs that your promotional coordinating committee executes annually. And as we know, based on some of the changes, the modifications to events, and the guidelines that are in place due to COVID-19, we've had to rethink that program. So many of you that are on the call today, thank you for participating in the program with us in the past. Thank you for your diligence in submitting your application last spring to be considered for this fiscal year. You know, we apologize, and it was not something we were wanting to do, to have to cancel the program at the beginning of the year. But we are very thankful that our city council was able to review and accept and allow us to move forward with this program in a new modified format. And that's what we're going to take you through today. So the Modified Cultural GIA Program, as I mentioned, the PCC offers this program annually to support nonprofits with their events and their activities. As I mentioned, due to COVID-19 and the restrictions on group gatherings, the PCC has temporarily modified this annual program. Again, this is a temporary modification. We are hoping that, that as things change and as guidelines shift, that we'll be able to continue to make modifications to respond to what events look like in the current scenario we are in. With this new modified program, we are taking a new approach to how grants will be awarded. And what this means is that the PCC is maintaining $100,000 total for GIA funding this fiscal year. How that will be divided up, instead of in a competitive basis where organizations will apply for what they need and the PCC will then award it based on that need and the completion of that application, the PCC instead will be awarding 40 grants total, so a maximum of 40 grants each at the funding level of $2,500. The subcommittee will be made up of members of our PCC, and each month that subcommittee will review the applications that are received, and they'll recommend those in the form of a consent item on our PCC agenda monthly to the Promotional Coordinating Committee. The PCC will then approve those on a monthly basis, meaning that this program and this process will be a rolling grant process. All right. Some of the modified GIA guidelines include that grants are available. So this is similar and this is still in alignment with our previous grant process, but grant funding is only available to local nonprofit organizations. So local nonprofit organizations based here in San Luis Obispo that are offering that cultural, social, or recreational benefit to our residents here in the city of San Luis Obispo. Events that can be funded are limited to virtual or in-person passive events only. So again, they have to align with the guidelines that are enacted by the state and county health officials. Our GIA funds are only to be used for the production and marketing expenses related to an event. So this is definitely a shift from our traditional grants and aid program into this modified grants and aid program. So what that means is that production expenses can be covered through this grants and aid program. However, a minimum of 25% or $625 of the awarded funds, so of the $2,500, must be spent on marketing and advertising expenses. So that's a little bit of a different shift in that not all of the funding has to go towards advertising expenses. However, all expenses do need to relate directly to the event that is being applied for within this grant. There can only be one grant per event that's awarded. However, organizations may be awarded up to 2 separate grants within the fiscal year to support different programs. So if your organization is putting on 2 different events, you would have the opportunity to apply for grant funding as that organization for each of those events with separate applications and be separately considered for the $2,500 grant. But they would need to take place at different times and different programs throughout the year. So eligibility, taking a look at the eligibility, this will be very familiar to you for those of you who have participated in the past. We look at this both in terms of the organization's eligibility as well as the events. So as we've said a number of times through this webinar, organizations must have nonprofit status. They must be a nonprofit organization locally here in San Luis Obispo in order to be eligible. They have to show that they are responsible for the planning and provision of the cultural, social, or recreational program or event, and have the managerial and fiscal competence to perform the project. So you have to be able, within your application, as you're responding to the questions that are outlined, to be able to show us that your organization is fit to be able to receive this grant and be able to execute the program that you have outlined as presented within your application. You must also be in good standing with the city. That includes in good standing with the PCC from either prior grants and aid, event promotion, or other support or partnership that you've had with the city in the past. And you must extend your program to the general public. So this needs to be something that is not exclusive to members of your organization, board members, funders, if you will, but would be something that could be extended to the general public here within San Luis Obispo. In terms of the event eligibility, the event must either be a virtual or an in-person passive event only. So again, meeting the current state and county health guidelines, we cannot have groups of people gathering or congregating for different events and experiences at this point in time. So they must meet those guidelines, and to do that, be able to show us that it's either a virtual or passive in-person event. The event must support the city's meta goal of economic recovery, stability, and resiliency, and also be in alignment with the city's core values. Also, the event must occur, it has to take place in this current fiscal year, so basically between now and the end of June of 2021. The use of the grant funds, the grant must exclusively be used for the production and marketing expenses directly related to the event. So as we discussed earlier, unlike our traditional GIA program, this allows you to also use the grant funding for the production expenses, but it has to be production expenses directly related to the event or activity. Examples of what that can look like, you may have a service fee that you're paying for a virtual platform. You may be making COVID modifications or purchasing PPE, or you may be hiring a performer, artist, or a speaker that's engaging in this virtual or passive event that you're producing. All of those expenses, in addition to what your marketing expenses might be, would be applicable to use grant funding for. So just to reiterate, the areas that grant funding would not be able to cover would be things like your office overhead or staff, any of your office equipment or equipment for your organization that would be considered your daily equipment, rental of space, so your office space, those types of things, scholarships and honoraria, general website maintenance and hosting, and general email systems or base subscriptions. So if you have increased subscriptions or you're using a new communications tool specific to the event, those things would fit. It just would not be your general website maintenance or base subscriptions that would fit. So your applications. Applications will be accepted at any point throughout the year until the funds are exhausted. So again, we have $100,000 available. That's 40 grants at the $2,500 value. We will accept applications throughout the entire fiscal year until those all of those funds have been exhausted. The cutoff date, because we do have to have some sort of rhyme or reason so that it can give the PCC and the subcommittee the time to review and make those recommendations. So the cutoff date is the first day of each month. So regardless of the day of the week, you can always remember that by noon on the first day of every month is when your application, your digital application is due. What that will also allow is for the committee then to put it in queue and have it available at their next committee meeting, which always falls on the second Wednesday of the month. They will be able to review and make those considerations as a component of their consent calendar. The digital application, it's a digital application form, so you don't need to turn in any paper copies of anything this year. That digital application form can be found on the city's website using the friendly URL slowcity.org/culturalGIA. So you can use that URL. When you get to that website, which I'll walk you through in just a little bit, you'll have three kind of different areas within the application. You'll have to complete the full application, which is a web form that you'll fill out directly through that site. You'll also have to upload your proof of local nonprofit status, And you'll also have to complete, and it's part of the application, part of the digital process, the signed statement of limitations and disbursement. And so if you're familiar with the GIA application in the past, it's usually that 4th page attachment that basically says that you understand the provisions of the application and the grant process. So with the modified GIA program, we do have final reports that are required as well. So while we are providing these grants, we do want to make sure that we fully understand and can report back on the events that we funded through this grant process. And so the way that we can gather that information and also ensure that the contract terms of the grant were met is by having you provide your final report to us after your event has concluded. Now, again, since this is a rolling process, unlike the traditional grants and aid program, this will be done in alignment with the timeline of your event. So it will be on you to help remember when your window of response needs to be for your application or for your final report submission. It will be a digital submission only. So you'll be able to fill out a digital form similar to your digital application. You'll have a digital form that you submit for your final report. It'll include an administrator's report that you'll tell about your event and what your findings were. It'll give statistical information, how many people participated, where people were represented from. You'll also provide a financial report that will explain to us how the funds, how the $2,500 was allocated and spent. And then you'll provide any examples, upload any examples of recognition for the city that was provided as a sponsor for the event. And in final, the reports are due 90 days after the conclusion of your event. So you'll have 3 months to be able to pull that together. But the sooner you get that back, the better. So then you'll be eligible in good standing to be able to apply should you have another event that you'd like to apply for in the 2 event max applications. Key dates and deadlines. This information is all available on the city's website, again, through that friendly URL, slowcity.org/culturalGIA. The application timeline, again, just to kind of give you a sense of what it looks like, applications are always due by 12 p.m. noon on the 1st of each month. So just as you can see here, it doesn't matter what day of the week it is, it's all done digitally. So you would just fill it out online, hit submit, and then it would be put into the repository so that we could review them. And it's always due by noon on the 1st of the month. Then the corresponding PCC review or consideration is then outlined as well. So if you submit your application on or before December 1st, then your application will be considered at the December 9th PCC meeting. And so you would be able to then, you would then hear back from the city, you would hear back from myself on if your application was awarded and you were able to receive the grant. So day to day, who's who in our GIA team. So just want to give you guys a little update on that. I've introduced to you John Thomas, who is one of the members of our promotional coordinating committee and is our vice chair for that committee. In addition, you also have met today Ryan Heath, who is one of the subcommittee representatives. So in addition, our PCC board chair, Dana, and another one of our PCC committee members, Stephanie, are our representatives on that committee. In addition, the PCC will be assigning a GIA liaison. And so one member of our board of our PCC committee that's made up of 7 members will be assigned to your event to just help you out, participate, answer any questions that you might have, and just learn about how this experience is. It's just another touch point and another person to help support the work that you're doing and to help support the connection between the city's funding of your event and any needs that your event has. In addition, myself as the tourism manager, I will be your contact for the application and for any grant questions. I'll help you with the contracting and disbursement of the funds. And then in addition, on our team, we've got Chantal Burns, our tourism coordinator. She'll help with some of our administrative support. You'll likely hear from her as it relates to collecting your final report or processing any of the information and reminders, key reminders and dates that may come up. In addition, as an extension of our team, the PCC has, for the 8th year, I think it is, has partnered with the SLO Chamber of Commerce in order to provide additional marketing and PR support for grants, awarded grants and aid organizations. So organizations that receive the grants and aid program funding. So Jackie Clark Charlesworth, who's on the call, she is one of the representatives from the SLO Chamber, as well as Carrie Forsberg, who will also be a representative. So you may at some point in time, if your event is funded, hear from any of us or all of us as additional support to help you be successful in the execution of your event. New this year is some changes that we've made in terms of the support for the partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. And so again, for those of you who participated in this program before, know that once your event is funded, you are provided with a suite of opportunities, of special kind of complementary opportunities to help promote your event and help support you in being successful. This year, we've continued that work through the partnership with the PCC and the TBIT and the SLO Chamber in order to make that work. Some of the changes that have been outlined this year, because we are in a little bit of a different situation, we have found that there is an opportunity to provide some additional services. So we will continue to work closely with the Chamber of Commerce, and they will provide the previously offered services, but have actually added an additional service, which will include a one-on-one consultation or training if there's any support that you need in getting your virtual event off the ground. So what does this suite of opportunities look like? It includes initial outreach and communication that the Chamber will be in touch with you to help coordinate. They'll be sharing your press releases across all of the Chamber-owned social media channels and getting that information out. They'll also be distributing the information to local media, so they'll help you be able to, through roundups of what's happening on a quarterly basis, be able to share your events and activities through that. They'll also help in assisting with adding to a select number of local community calendars, including the SLO Chamber calendar of events, the SLO Happenings calendar of events that's operated through visitslo.com, and also through the Visit SLOCal community calendar as well. In addition, they'll also make available visitor center support should guests or event attendees have questions or want to have a number that they can call into and answer any questions or provide suggestions about how about what's happening in the community. The visitor center will be able to support with that as well. And new this year, there's an additional opportunity, a couple of additional opportunities that have been made available. So regardless of if your grant, if your organization, if your event is funded or not through this program, this new opportunity will be made available to anyone to participate. And so what these will look like is a two-part series of virtual workshops that will be planned and executed with through the partnership with the SLO Chamber and with the PCC in order to help inspire or to help answer questions or provide solutions for how to produce events during this unusual time that we find ourselves in. So each session, there'll be 2 separate sessions, and each workshop will be focused on creating what that successful virtual event can look like, either virtual or a passive event, through either inspiration, aspiration, what are trends, what is it looking like in the event industry, and how can you bring your event to life? What can that look like? But then also tactical tools about what does that actually mean, and how do I make this work, and how do I market and promote this event? The Chamber has quite an array of experience over this during this time that they are making free and available to be able to share with organizations here in San Luis Obispo. So these sessions will take place later this fall, so keep your eye out for that. You'll receive communication from the city as well as from the Chamber, and having signed up and registered for this webinar, you'll be able to be on the list to receive the first information on that as well, so stay tuned for those. All right, so now I'm going to click us through really quick to show you what this looks like in case you have not had a chance to check out the website. So if you go to our friendly URL, as I mentioned, the slocity.org/cultural-GIA, it will take you to this landing page. And this landing page has the complete information of everything that we're going over today and more, all about the program, and has contact information so you know how to reach us. We will be replacing this section right here. After today's webinar, we'll be making the video available so that people can check that out if they weren't able to participate. As you continue to scroll down, you'll see some information on the application and guidelines, including you can click here on this button, which will take you right into the guidelines spec sheet, so you can read through that. If you continue scrolling, you'll be able to see the application timeline, which is what we reviewed just moments ago. And last but not least, you find the information on how to apply. So you can click right here on this button, which will take you into our Cultural Grants and Aid application form. Again, this application form is 100% available and accessible online, and so this should be the section that you're filling out. You'll be able to see that much of the information, like those guidelines, are available here through this drop-down section. You'll see the How to Apply section, which will give you the reminder about all of the information that you need to make sure is included and the dates that it's due. Then in this section 3, you'll find the GIA application. And so this section right here is where you will fill out all of the information as it relates to your event. Items like number 11 right here, if you need, I know traditionally in our other process, events will ask, can I supply an additional sheet of paper if there's not enough space within the writable PDF. And so in this case, you'll be able to, should you need to add additional line items for your expenses, we'll be able to click right on there, which will make them available to add for you. In addition, when you select sections like on number 7, if it's a virtual event, the application will then adjust to the questions that you must complete for a virtual event, or keep them all expanded should it be an in-person passive event. So you'll continue through all of that. You'll get to section 4 right here, where you'll then complete this information for the statement of limitations and payment disbursement. You'll be able to click sign right here. That'll create your digital signature, so you won't have to upload anything additional for that form. And last but not least, you'll have section number 5 right here, where you'll be able to upload through a digital file. You'll be able to upload the proof of your nonprofit status. You'll be able to upload that right there. And when everything is complete, you'll hit submit. Some questions that we've received is, how can I know if I can go back to this again? In that case, you will save it as a draft, and that will be able to save that for you so that you can re-access it if you want to add additional information. Otherwise, you'll hit submit. And it must be complete. All of the sections that do have the red stars, the red asterisks, must be complete in order for it to be submitted. Okay, so again, the URL, slocity.org/cultural-GIA. The big reminder is that by 12 p.m. on the first of each month is when your applications are due to be considered. You can always submit it again and again through, you can submit it at any point and we will get it in the queue. As soon as you have received funding for one event and you've completed your final report, you could then also be considered to receive funding for an additional event should you apply. So with that, that is all I have for the presentation, and I will turn it over to Chantal to take us through what questions have come in that we can address for you.
Wonderful. So we did get quite a few questions. Thank you, everyone, for using that feature. So let's just kick it off. A few came kind of the same one. So could you further explain what a passive event is, or just go in a little bit more detail on what that specifically means?
Yeah, certainly. So I think a good example of what a passive event could look like might be an art installation. So maybe you're working, you're interested in bringing out an artist to do plein air, or maybe you guys might be familiar with the chalk muralists that did some chalk art in the Mission Plaza. So that's an example of a passive event where it was spread out over a period of time. It was marketed and people were able and invited to come and walk through. It did not create an opportunity for events or for participants of the event to congregate and to gather. It just instead created an opportunity that you could still connect with the community, come out in a safe way, walk by and see something happening within our community. But not necessarily a time and place for a large group of people to gather, which of course is not allowed during the current requirements from our state and county health officials.
Wonderful, thank you. And then kind of following right along that question, let's see, where did that go? Okay. So can you also define what you mean by cultural, social, and recreational programs?
Yeah, so social, cultural, or recreational programs can be any sort of event or activity that helps to promote those areas of values within our community. So social events could be something that helps support nonprofit organizations, through educational opportunities, right? So again, has to be open to the public, but it could be, a speaker series. Cultural events, of course, can be celebrating all of the wonderful cultural activities and festivities that we have here. I actually just was seeing that, for example, Dia de los Muertos has been shifted to a virtual event. I think that's a great example of a cultural event. And recreational type events, especially during this time. Recreational events can be things like virtual 5Ks or different components like that still can encourage people to get out and do things again in a passive environment, but would also be able to provide or promote healthy lifestyles and recreational opportunities here in San Luis Obispo.
Wonderful. And then kind of tagging on with that, we did get one come in asking if fundraising events are eligible for this grant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say the majority of the events that apply through GIA, especially being nonprofits, I would say the majority of those events probably have some connection to a fundraising opportunity, as meeting the financial needs. So definitely fundraising opportunities could work. The thing that I think is most important for you to keep in mind with that is that it must be something that could be open and accessible to the general public. So if this is a fundraising opportunity that's specific only to your members or only to a certain classification of your donors or a specific group that you're speaking to, then that would not be something that's eligible. It would need to be something that's open to the public to participate in. For example, an auction, that you may be doing a virtual auction as a fundraiser for your organization, but it wouldn't only be limited to the people that are in your database or are already, specific members of your organization.
Awesome, thank you, Molly. And let's see, and then is this funding available for existing or ongoing events, such as like a series that's currently already active?
I think it could be something that could definitely be applied for either an ongoing or a series of events, even if it's already started. It can't be retroactive. So if your event has already taken place and you're going back to say, oh, can I get funding to offset what I already did for the event? That's not something. But if it's a series where it's you may be mid-run right now, but you still have, something that's happening once a month through the end of the fiscal year, yes, that is something that would be able to be applied for. You could also just choose one event in your series that you would be able to apply for, 1 or 2 events within the series. That could be an option as well.
Wonderful, thank you. And actually, you answered 2 questions in that one.
Look at that.
Great job. Okay, so if someone is interested in submitting 2 applications, can these be submitted at the same time or in the same cycle? And then does the event have to be completed before applying for additional funding?
Yep. So you cannot submit them at the same time. You cannot submit them in the same cycle. Again, within the qualifications, you must complete, the event must be completed, and the final report must be submitted and approved before you can apply for the second, your access to the second grant opportunity.
Wonderful, thank you, Molly. And then I'm just double checking because it looks like some we have covered, which is great. Wonderful questions, you guys. This is great. Okay, one about timeline, about how long before organizations will know about their application. And then if a second event scheduled before 90 days, oh, let me reread that one. So I guess timing on about what is the timeline of when people will find out if they are awarded funding?
Yeah, so you'll hear by the end of that month. So we'll get back to you as soon as possible. You know, within the week, you'll be able to find out if your event was funded, and then we'll have to go through the contracting process. So, you know, the hope is within the 30 days, you'll have your contract signed and your event funding in hand in order to execute the components for your event. And so, yeah, within a week, you'll find out if the PCC funded, and you can always tune in to the PCC meeting, especially now, everything is done virtually, so you can actually call in and register via the webinar and see the approval at that point in time. But then you'll also be contacted by staff to confirm and then to set into motion the next components, which would be your contracting that we would need to get completed so that we can then release the funding.
Great, and then kind of follow up to that, just thinking, so with final reporting being due within 90 days, are they allowed to apply for that second event, or if their second event takes place within 90 days after the first event, is that allowed?
So again, you have to have your final report completed and done and approved, and completely, one event has to be completely completed, and the whole event cycle with the funding has to be completed before you can move on to the next one. And so, you know, if there are, you know, tiny terms within that and there's specific questions that you have, feel free to reach out, you know, but it'll be up to you. We'll accept them before 90 days. So, you know, within 10 days after your event, if you're ready to get the final report in because you know you've got an event coming up in another month that you want to apply for, then we would put that, we'd encourage you to go ahead and get that report done as quickly as possible in order to set yourself up for success to be able to apply yet again.
Wonderful. Thank you, Molly. And then will applications be reviewed on a first come, first served basis or within 1 month? And then will they be looked at according to the date of the event? For example, a much sooner event taking priority over one that takes later in the year?
They will be reviewed on a monthly basis. And so they will be reviewed in the order that they are received in a monthly basis. And so again, you know, we have 40 grants that are available. And so, you know, the first deadline, the first kind of due date for events would be November 1st would be that first kind of application deadline. And so anything that's been received from now up and, you know, until November 1st at noon would be considered by the PCC at that November 14th meeting. And the date is, oh, it's right over here. So at the November 18th meeting. So that would be the order. And they will be considering those in the order that they're received. So as they come in, they would have to come in during that month in order to be considered for that month. And then determinations. And just because it's been submitted, the PCC does have the discretion to decide to fund an application or to not fund an application. They do have the discretion and the authority to be able to make that determination as they see fit within awarding the grant funds.
Fabulous, thank you. And then do funds need to be spent within 90 days of receiving the award?
It just needs, the funds need to be spent within the execution of your event. And so they should be spent within the execution of your event. If you are applying for an event that's not until June, but you apply in November, you know, it wouldn't be within those 90 days, and that's fine. We are more concerned that you spend the funding as you need for your event, with the minimum of 25% of it, or $625 spent towards marketing, and then be able to submit the report back to us on how those funds were used.
Great. And then a question a little bit more specific on kind of a series. So if someone is doing, for example, filming something per month, and then would they be submitting multiple applications per, let's say, a show? Let's say they're putting on a show once a month. Would they need to apply for each showing, or would it be kind of a series as a whole?
I think I answered this question a little bit earlier. If it's part of a series, you can make the determination if you want to apply one time for the series, or if you want to apply for certain, in this case, shows within that series. You would just have to make sure that you're giving yourself enough flexibility within the series. A, should you only receive one grant and not the second one that you were considering, or B, if you know that there's enough timeline and space between the two in order for you to complete the final report.
Wonderful. Okay, so kind of shifting gears real quick. So with the state and the county's regulations, if maybe we go into another tier, or if something changes and we're able to host outdoor performances, maybe with a limited audience size, would the application shift with that as we go?
So should things shift and should things change, then the PCC may consider adjusting their program with the approval of City Council in order to make those adjustments. So currently, and for this fiscal year, the program that has been outlined is this program that you see in front of you today. And so that's the safest way to move forward at this point in time. If something dramatically changes or shapes out differently between now and the end of June, and there's still grant funding available, then that may be something that the PCC can consider and take those recommended modifications, should they be something that they can move forward on.
And then just quick follow-up here on, as we progress throughout the year and grants are awarded, will people be able to track how many grants are still available on the website?
Yes, we can make that available. That's actually a great suggestion. I don't think that's something that necessarily we had put into place yet, but I think that's a great suggestion, and Chantal and I will work together to get that built out for you guys. Sounds great. And it's also something, again, that the PCC monthly it'll be an updated component of their monthly reports. And so we'll see it in that space as well.
Wonderful. Okay, and I'm looking now. It looks like we're starting to get more into individual event or group questions, which I think maybe we can follow up with individually. That might be helpful. I'm thinking I went through most of the kind of group questions that might be out there. Let me just double check here real quick as you guys are typing them in. Okay. Yes. Okay, yep, so it looks like we are down just to individual event questions, which we are happy to follow up with individually, if that's okay with you, Molly.
That works for me. I just wanted to ask if John or Ryan have any other thoughts or inputs that you guys as committee members would like to share with our events on the call. I think that we must be good.
Sorry, my mouse is locked up.
Oh, shoot.
Just want to, suggest to people that this is to, again, it's to improve the quality of life of local citizens and to promote tourism. So as long as we qualify for those two things, we'll be really interested to see what you come up with. Because quality of life right now is crucial for all of us to survive this. So we'll be very excited to see any ideas you have, and we'll be very receptive to them.
Thank you.
Definitely, yeah, no, I'm excited to read the application for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for your time today. Again, thank you for registering, for being a part of this. We will make this available should there be anyone else within your organizations or your network that you want to make sure receives the information we've gone over today. Please be in touch if you've got questions about the application or about your eligibility. Also, please stay tuned. You'll be receiving more information from both us with the city as well as Jackie and her team at the Chamber about the upcoming workshops that will be rolling out in the next couple of months here. So stay tuned for those as well. And thank you again for all that you are doing during this time. And we hope that, this modified process is something that will help alleviate maybe some of the pressures that your organization is feeling or experiencing during this time. And I'm really proud of the PCC for thinking differently and approaching this work to be able to make these available for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any additional questions, and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you all.